The legacy economic model of the 20th century operates on a rigid, one-way pipeline. It forces industrial production outward, pushing products, data, and hardware into dense biological environments. We are watching this pipeline fracture as it attempts to force static systems into living spaces. The legacy vision of the Fourth Industrial Revolution assumes corporate technology is an omniscient master, a global brain dictating physical reality from the top down. But an algorithm is not a planetary brain. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, CRISPR, and 3D printing are in reality single-purpose tools. They are one-dimensional advanced technologies, lacking the context of the physical world. These tools sit in contrast to the biological edge, humanity, and local ecologies. This living network scales from planetary systems down to the cellular microbe, possessing a 10-dimensional complexity that a single-purpose tool cannot replicate. When a market allows a one-dimensional machine to dictate terms to a 10-dimensional living ecology, the gears of the global substrate collide. This creates supply chain bottlenecks and exhausts physical power grids. Resolving this requires a kinetic decoupling. This is a structural shift in how physical assets and digital intelligence intersect. We subordinate the machine into a frictionless exoskeleton, allowing it to be routed by the specific requirements of the local biological edge. The current economy collapses the living world into a single financial ledger, gross domestic product. By tracking this one-dimensional metric, the market obscures the systemic destruction occurring across other sectors. This chart maps the reality of the brownfield. The cost of the extraction model is a massive crisis bleeding across four foundational pillars: the cyber, sovereign, physical, and social sectors. We call this the tetrad. The cyber market bleeds $96 trillion in hoarded dead mass and supply chain friction. Simultaneously, sovereign states paper over local decay with a $315 trillion synthetic debt bridge. The physical ecology carries a $275 trillion unfunded liability as natural watersheds and power grids hit thermal limits. At the social level, individuals bear a $47 trillion cost in morbidity and cognitive burnout. The architecture mathematically contains the 20th century enterprise model, defining the boundaries of its extraction while mapping its specific frictions. When we clear the friction of this brownfield reality, we step onto the greenfield floor of the new economy. Global accounting from the World Bank validates this baseline, a $1.152 quadrillion floor. In this model, the state, the community, the enterprise, and the individual converge onto a single unified plane to co-create value. By mapping and containing the hidden tetradic bleed, the global market accesses this $1.152 quadrillion floor of planetary abundance. The algorithm is a deployable tool, and it requires scientific containment to function without destroying its physical environment. First, ontological systems engineering builds a rigid exoskeleton enclosing the complex biological node. Second, macrosystemic prosperity routes kinetic energy optimally along the exterior struts, ensuring it safely avoids the chaotic interior. Injecting advanced technology directly into the physical world without these OSE boundaries causes immediate thermodynamic collapse. High-speed machine execution cannot be pushed into 90-day supply chains and human populations without protection. Together, OSE and MSP form the paired physics of the kinetic co-creation economy. One provides the structure, the other manages the flow. Without OSE building the exoskeleton and MSP routing the kinetic energy, algorithmic systems cannot safely coexist with the physical, ecological limitations of the biological world. Moving from theoretical physics to precise, on-the-ground mechanics requires a new architecture. This relies on the Sovereign Modular Coherence Orchestration Layer, or SMCO. The SMCO functions as a local airlock and a sovereignty barrier at the legally defined regional level. Legacy technology ignores the biological counterparty. It relies on centralized cloud servers to guess what a specific local environment needs. The SMCO replaces that guesswork with scalable watchtowers at the local edge. These function as the sensory organs of the network, cryptographically capturing biological intent so it can be translated into code. Through combinatorial routing, local humans dynamically combine one-dimensional tools, such as matching a quantum routing algorithm with a 3D printing blueprint to solve specific local frictions. This innovation generates entirely new four-dimensional intellectual property, creating compounding yield for all participants. Because machines are trained on historical data, they lack the capacity for counterfactual imagination. The human edge serves as the verified engine of sense-making. Connecting these innovation hubs requires global infrastructure that coordinates them without extracting their value. The network uses the Sovereign Supranational Coherence Orchestrator, supported by the Prosperity Co-Creation Corporation, or P3C. P3C acts as an agnostic clearinghouse for the system. P3C operates on a mandate of absolute zero custody. It holds no fiat currency, no corporate IP, and no raw consumer data. It custodies nothing but the routing logic. Biological realities are computed at the edge, converting demand into a zero-knowledge proof. Raw data is instantly purged, never captured. This single cryptographic proof then perfectly duplicates behind the distinct firewalls of the enterprise, the state, the grid, and the individual. This distributed 4D yield ledger ensures all participants across the tetrad share the same mathematical truth for settlement, while maintaining sovereign custody of their own internal data architectures. Because the enterprise no longer holds the raw data centrally, the attack surface drops to near zero. This structure eliminates massive cybersecurity vulnerabilities, shielding the biological edge from the liability of centralized corporate data lakes. This raises a challenge. How can we overlay this quantum infrastructure onto the legacy map without causing the current global economy to crash? The transition is ignited by a zero-custody assembly called the Zyro Hive Consortium. This brings together industry pioneers across compute, silicon, energy, logistics, and capital into a single ignition point. The routing engine utilizes the $96 trillion subset of the brownfield bleed, the asymmetric sunk costs of these legacy players, as the metabolic fuel for ignition. The system operates under the mandate of a zero drop in delivery. Global supply chains cannot afford a single moment of downtime during this transition. To sustain demand while the network builds, a $700 billion plus ecosystem reengineering credit acts as a networked brain. It funds the high-latency physical preparation required to guarantee instantaneous execution at the user edge. Building the kinetic economy does not require printing new fiat money. It uses the liquefaction of the legacy system's trapped mass to fund a safe planetary transition. To protect this network from monopoly capture, the consortium is governed by an antitrust geometry called the pentamesh. It spans overlapping legal jurisdictions to prevent any single entity from altering the ledger. Within this mesh lies the sovereign veto. If a localized ecology, like a natural watershed, reaches its physical thermal limit, it can instantly reject a demand algorithm's resource request. This veto acts as a thermodynamic router, instantly scanning the planetary mesh for a region with verified regenerative capacity. When the route diverts, the engine calculates a 92% algorithmic yield expansion, splitting this value between the initiating community and the region providing capacity. This distribution model ensures that local ecological protection acts as a source of revenue for the sovereign community, rather than a cost. Instead of pushing physical limits until they collapse, the sovereign veto dynamically balances the Earth's thermodynamic loads, converting ecological protection into shared prosperity. These localized synchronization events cascade until they reach a global critical mass, Network 5.3.0 autopoiesis. At the moment of autopoiesis, the temporary scaffolding of the initial consortium dissolves, transferring the network's mass into permanent, stable regional zones. This triggers a separation of powers. The machine routing logic is severed from the biological authorization keys, transferring oversight to a co-equal counterparty known as the social helix. This architectural separation prevents unilateral execution, protecting the system from future cartel co-option. By deploying capital exclusively into pre-cleared, localized demand vacuums, the architecture eliminates the risk of investment failure. With the physical substrate managed by the exoskeleton, human cognitive effort moves out of the 20th century scarcity trap. This bandwidth is redirected from maintenance to exploration. By yielding machine routing to polycentric consensus, this architecture provides the exoskeleton needed to focus human capacity on stabilizing the biosphere, extending biological longevity, and reaching toward extraterrestrial grand frontiers.